And we are on the air, and it is after a night of storms in the region. I think south of us they had some tornadoes. I don't know about the north side, but it's a overcast day. But for those of us who aren't, reconstructing our houses from pieces that were broadcast all over a 50-mile radius, life is good. And we send healing thoughts to those who are, in fact, trying to put their house back together again. How are you this morning, Barrett?
I am good. I'm good. It reminds me a little Humpty Dumpty trying to put the house itself back together again. But I think the people with the houses will have more success than Humpty Dumpty did.
Well, the whole universe, of course, is very fragile. We've got Humpty Dumpty, who, had that hideous experience. And as far as I know, never was able to recollect himself. Now we appear to have...
What was he doing sitting on that wall in the first place? Come on, Humpty. You're an egg. Don't sit up there.
Yes, well, we're all eggs in our own right, and maybe that's the secret, is to fall off of the wall intentionally to get rid of the shell.
Well, that's no yoke. No yoke.
That's true. It's also a political year, so we've got Hillary Dumpty and Trumpty Dumpty both ready to go down.
Humpty Dumpty. Oh, that is hilarious.
Yes, I'll probably be spreading that on the internet for the afternoon, just to reflect on how clever my ego is. And that's what we're always doing, isn't it? We're always trying to get our ego out there and make it a visible entity, and to protect it and guard it and cherish it and nurture it, and then it turns around and bites the crap out of us. So
oh, come on, Trumpty Dumpty wouldn't do that to you.
Yes, it all is part of the greater circus of life, and those of us who are in resistance to that circus of life, well, shame on us, because we're missing the whole point, which is to arrive at that place where we really are ready to say, none of this could possibly be real because it's just too freaking inane, and that is the glory of this epoch in human history, is that we have the ability to monitor the madness globally thanks to the internet, and as a result of that, we can realize God, even on his worst day, could not even begin to create something as futile and chaotic and moronic as this realm that we exist in, or imagine that we exist in.
That is 100% true. God would be a monster if he had made up this world or had anything to do with it. So the good news is God is not a monster. God is perfect love. God is always there for us to remember and to return our awareness to. Because God never left. But within our minds, we think that we did. We think that we are like the prodigal son that wandered off into this far country. But Jesus wasn't talking about Africa or, some remote planet or part of this planet. He was talking about being here is the far country. Believing that this world is our truth is being an alien to ourselves. And we want to come back home. We want to realize that home never left, and that we always have it within ourselves. So today, Chris and I are going to do a little divergence from our manual for the teachers, and we're going to do a little potpourri of bits and tidbits that speak to us today. So one of the tidbits that jumped out at me that I wanted to share today is Workbook Lesson 25. Workbook Lesson 25 states, "I do not know what anything is for." Now, to most of us, that sounds very threatening. I don't know what anything is for. What? I've spent 20, 40, 80 years learning what things are for. I know what things are for. But it's actually good news. It's good news to not know what things are for, because then we start to get off the hook. We're not on the hook for what happens here. Maybe we did on a fantastical whim make up this whole world, but we don't really need to be responsible for what never truly happened. So let me read a little bit more of this. He says, you perceive the world and everything in it as meaningful in terms of ego goals. These goals have nothing to do with your own best interests, because the ego is not you. This false identification makes you incapable of understanding what anything is for. So that's why we do not know what anything is for. We are identified with the ego. And if this message is good news, the ego is bad news. Turn that bad news off. Change the channel, I'm telling you. We don't have to listen to Trumpty Dumpty or Hillary Dumpty or whoever else tell us what is real, because as spiritual students, we start to get that only love is real, only peace is real, only joy is real. And that is news worth spreading.
Yes, it definitely is. And, one of the things, when I first started working with a course and started looking at the lessons, the early stages of the lesson agenda is to get you to the point where you release this death grip that you have on ideas about what things are for and what reality is. And I noticed some of my friends who were looking at the course at the same time were really struggling with that. And my nature has been, and I think this is kind of a salient point here, is that I've lived my life rigging things. I have always been a guy who would rig things if I didn't have all the components that I thought I needed. And I think when you can look at a common object like a spoon and get beyond that idea of a spoon is for my bowl of soup or my bowl of cereal, and see a spoon as being a necessary implement for whatever occurs around you, you can end up using it in carpentry to pry boards loose or whatever. But it's just that process of getting out of having such a rigid set of beliefs about what things are, how you can use them, and what you need to have in life in order to make your life workable. As soon as we move away from that rigidity, all of a sudden, we're able to grab whatever is at hand and utilize it in an innovative way with conditions or circumstances we're dealing with in our life. And that's been one of the things that I have consciously taught my kid Eric and my grandsons, and they're pretty good at doing that. They're able to slide out of that having a boxed-in vision of what something absolutely means, and that gives you a huge amount of empowerment. And then imagine taking that mindset and moving away from just the mundane world, the day-to-day world of practical application and, making money, chopping wood, and eventually dying, and transpose that paradigm into spiritual truth universally, and recognize that the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, has got a different use for everything in your life than you imagined its purpose was. And wow, does that free you up and give you a surge of empowerment to meet any condition unflinchingly and knowing with confidence, yeah, we can make this work. I don't know how the hell we're going to make it work, but we'll make it work. And then the Holy Spirit gives you the answer. It presents to you whatever it is that you need to look at through different eyes, through different vision.
Yeah, and I like that idea, because it really says that there is always a way. even in those circumstances where we don't see a way. Sometimes in our life, it looks like we're coming up against a wall or an impassable, obstacle. And even in those instances, there is a path forward. We might not see what it is yet. It might seem like options A and B, there's no way, but we might not yet know there's an option C or D or E. And then all of a sudden, we get some inspiration. We see a new avenue. We see a new opportunity. And by choosing that, then we really step into that faithfulness, that I think we hear it in kind of corporate speak. It's like, think outside of the box. Well, yeah, eventually we get so far outside of the box that there's like no box. We're just in the flow. We're just relaxing into that. And when these tricky spots come up, we even relax into the uncertainty. We relax into maybe anxiety about the uncertainty. And we really let everything show up that's in us. And we don't say no to any of it.
Absolutely, yeah. It, like I said, it is a liberation technique that is amazing. And right now, everybody, I find this interesting because I'm going to go back and waddle around in politics one more time. But everybody has thrown up their hands and they're, Bernie is dead, the whole thing's over, his campaign is done. And yet those of us who are watching the way this thing is playing out are going, no, you're not really seeing the possibility of, a back door opening up that none of us are able to perceive now. And I think that's, again, that highlights the human nature, is that we get into a space where we're looking at the evidence as it appears to be, and the evidence is always very fragile as far as its construct. If you can taste it, touch it, hear it, see it, or smell it, it's not real, because it is in that realm of the physical. Now, as soon as you start thinking in the abstract realm, the metaphysical, all of a sudden you're opening doors into reality. And within that paradigm, anything can happen. And that's our biggest challenge. We can look at our political surroundings, we can look at our social constructs we've created in this realm, and recognize that ultimately there is a pattern here of either taking the literal way and running into the brick wall and having everything fall apart around us, or looking at all this as illusion in the highest sense and recognizing that the answers are underneath the illusion. They are behind the illusion. And so you have to stop believing in that illusion in order to overwhelm it, in order to transcend it, and to vanish it ultimately from your realm of perception, so that you are out there seeing a world that is a much more beautiful, kinder, gentler realm that you are starting to enter into and identify as your home. So if you're thinking about becoming a crusader, if you're thinking about picking up a sword and jumping on a horse and riding off to vanquish the evildoers, you're probably just, repeating history. You've probably done that in multiple previous lifetimes. But the reality is, once you start to recognize that the correction doesn't lie in the exterior world, the correction lies within your own mind. Wow, the amount of empowerment you gain by making that subtle shift of realization.
It's true, yeah. I mean, I don't know about the sword part, but I kind of want to ride a horse. That little horsey, that'd be fun.
Well, Lyle Lovett has his song about if I had a pony.
Oh, well, there we go.
Yeah, where he would ride his pony all over the place, and if he had a boat, then he'd take his pony on his boat and ride his pony on his boat as they went out to sea. It's a great song, and Lyle is a great man. I think he was probably one of the more enlightened people in Hollywood, you know, with that hairstyle and everything that he has going on.
That is hilarious. Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that just what we're talking about is this perfect example of like, yeah, we can be playful. We cannot take this seriously. And, you know, even when you're in the midst of it. So, for example, Lyle, you know, he's in the spotlight, and I don't know if he's still married to Julia Roberts, but I know they were for a while. And to see all the glitz and glamour and, you know, the sparkly things here in the world, and to realize that they're not really sparkling. So, you know, the way that the Course describes it is it talks about the two frames, the two pictures, and the ego's frame. The frame is so thick it basically obscures the whole picture, but the frame is very alluring. It's has diamonds and rubies that are sparkling. But when we look even more closely at the frame of the ego, we see that the diamonds are really tears, and the rubies are really drops of blood. And all that glitters is not gold, as the expression is. And really everything here in the physical that glitters in any way is actually fool's gold. And we don't know as we start waking up that we are all fools. And it can be a little shocking to realize that we have been the fool all along, and we've simply been fooling ourselves. But the good news is that as we get that, we can say, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm tired of playing a game on myself. And that's when we really start moving into awakening.
That is absolutely a fact. And, you know, with going back one more time into politics, with this political year, the other thing that I think is so important that we put a lot of attention on is that inclination to judge. We're always drawn into that realm of making a judgment, condemning somebody else, and then having to limit ourselves by the judgment that we have passed against them, because that judgment ultimately comes back and is reflected within our own circumstances. So that's, again, the beauty of the Course, in that it causes us to stop and look more deeply into what it is that we believe. And, you know, one of my favorite stories in the New Testament is actually it's a story that was not in the original written text. Most scholars believe it was added later on to the book of John, but it's a story of the woman who was taken in adultery. And that's a very profound story. And the thing that I love about the way it plays out is that, you know, it was a massive setup. Basically, the priests and the people who were in authority were trying to trap Jesus. And this was an ongoing drama. They were, you know, it was like a chess game. And so they had waited all night with this woman. They were going to drag her out and throw her in front of Jesus and condemn her and ultimately stone her. And at dawn, they arrived at that point where they confronted Jesus, and he sat down. He didn't even stand up to like do a face-off. And he wrote the answer in the dirt. Well, this is a significant subtlety to the story, in that the day they confronted him, it was probably the Sabbath. And in Jewish tradition, you cannot write more than 2 letters on the Sabbath unless you write it in dirt, because then it spreads, then it's ephemeral. So Jesus, after they confronted him, and, you know, threw the woman down in front of him and said, you know, look at this whore. She's an adulteress. You know, this demands her death. Jesus didn't say a word, but he wrote it in the dirt in front of him. And I think that is probably one of the most profound stories in the Bible. Is, you know, this whole realm is a realm of subtleties, and we have to be able to see through those subtleties. And we don't have to necessarily attack. You know, he didn't jump up and start screaming and defend her and throw himself down and whatever. He simply wrote it out in the dirt. And that's the dog in the background going off with the mailman. So that's my dirt. But it's all about judgment. It's all about that tendency to jump on the bandwagon and condemn and pick up a couple of handfuls of stones and start the process, start the proceedings. And we have to drag ourselves back over and over and over again from that tendency to condemn. And this is a beautiful example of how it is so in our face. During a political year, we've got our judgments, and we have to look at the way that they are directing us and the outcome that we are creating for ourselves.
Yeah, that's a great, beautiful example. Jesus was really the way shower, and in these very powerful examples that come to us, we see that there is always a way of peace, even if it seems like there's no out. You know, another person could have been in the same situation Jesus was and really felt trapped and felt the need to defend or attack. But he could see that everyone in the situation was hurting. The woman who was accused of adultery was hurting. The people who felt the need to condemn her, they were hurting too. And he had no desire to add hurt to the situation. And his resolution of it was simply Spirit moving through him and expressing love in the face of a lot of attack and condemnation. And we can find those ways of being in the world as well.
Absolutely. Well, Barrett, this was kind of a fun discussion. Unfortunately, the dog joined in there for a while with us, but...
well, we'll have to have him on as a special guest next time.
Yeah, the easy way to entice him to participate, of course, is to set something edible down and then let him kind of try to sneak up and grab it from you. So. And that's the other part of this crazy world, is as soon as you set something down, somebody else is going to sneak up and grab it.
Well, that's a fitting ending to our somewhat political discussion today.
Political? Oh, my goodness. Did I get political again? You just have to slap me upside of the head when I go down that road. But yes, it is fun. And the most important part of the whole journey is to recognize that if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. So you need to do some work on that.
Well, speaking of fun, I am doing a few fun things coming up. You can always find out everything I'm doing at my website, which is barretthedin.com. This next weekend in Chicago here is Bhakti Fest. Starts tomorrow. It'd be great to have you come if you like yoga or yoga music, which is called Kirtan. We're going to have a great time. I'll be doing discounted energy healing sessions there. And then next month, my friend Jason and I are doing a weekend camping retreat called Playful Spirit Retreat, where we are going to have a lot of fun. And it's all about healing and having fun and letting go of what doesn't serve us anymore.
And that's going to be an awesome event. And Jason is an animal, so, you know, it's gonna be a good event just because you get to watch him, like, you know, jumping and cavorting and bouncing off of tree limbs and everything else. So that's going to be empowering.
Yeah, it's going to be fun and letting go of bits of our shadow that we don't need anymore. So, yeah, come and join us. That's July 16th into the 17th, Saturday into Sunday, one night camping.
And I might even totter down there and hang out for a few hours. So keep that in the back of your head too.
All right. Well, look forward to seeing you there.
And then we'll be organizing some more Course in Miracles events down here on the south side too as we move into July and August. So stay alert, because we will offer you that opportunity to join us and have dialogue about the Course and the silliness of this mess we've gotten ourselves into.
Now, as I like to say about A Course in Miracles, a course is a course, of course, of course. I'm
not even going to go there. I mean, that that I know is going to turn into something that I won't be able to pull myself out of. So it's going to be bouncing around in my head for the rest of the day. So I'm going to go outside and enjoy the green acres out here and have a nice rest of the morning. It was great chatting with you, Barrett, and we will pick this discussion up in 7 days.
All right. Look forward to it, Chris. Good chatting with you.
Take care.
All right. You too. Bye, man.
Bye.